What's up, water cooler? Today is episode 7. I'm Tristin Linville. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Callahan. This is Water Cooler Talks on manufacturing and technology. We're trying to make manufacturing technology cool again. Michael, what's up, man?
Hey, man, it's great. You know, kids went back to school, so hypothetically things would be quieter, but, they get home and then things get loud again. So you may hear bursts of energy coming from behind me. Don't worry.
Love it.
They'll have some water too, but they don't have the technology piece. So
love it, man.
That's good.
Well,
all good.
It's going to be a fun one today.
Tristin, I need a joke. I need something funny to get me going. Let's go.
Yeah, first day of school, you probably really need that. So I was actually robbed at the gas station today. So I called the police and they asked if I knew who did it. And I said, absolutely, officer. It was pump number 5.
At this point, holy smokes, that's accurate. Dude, you want to talk about some stuff?
Yeah. Unless you live in Oklahoma, baby.
Dude, I left my house yesterday. It was like, I don't know, 3:04. I thought about picking up some gas today. $3.99.
Ooh, no. That's amazing.
Good thing I drive a
bad way.
I did.
All right, Country Club. Today, innovation in business, right? Talk about some of the common challenges people are trying to solve out there right now.
Yeah. You know, Tristin, you and I know the reason we started this is we're trying to have this conversation around what are those common challenges that businesses face. Most of the time small, there could be medium or large, but all of them are facing a lot of common challenges. So you and I talked about, like, what are we seeing in innovation? Right now, I would say we'll boil it down into 3 things just for today. Future sessions, I'm sure we'll go a lot deeper in this, but the 3 things I'd say, first is simplification of business processes. Things like, let's say that a customer wants to place an order and they get put on credit hold. How does a company manage that inside of a system to get it to the right people to make sure that things flow through seamlessly? Because oftentimes it's not. So that's a big one. All these business processes. Do you have a thought on that?
Well, I was just going to ask you, like, when, let's say we have an immature, system to back up the business process. I mean, is a lot of this stuff happening manually? Paper over to Fred and they're taking care of that?
I think it could probably happen 2 ways. First is manually, right? It could be that we write it on a sticky note, but I don't think that's probably what's happening most places. I think it's probably happening outside in another system. So maybe my business system puts me on hold, but I go out and I go into Outlook and I send someone an email totally separate. So when they approve it in Outlook, that's still another step that someone has to go do and release. And then the customer service person has additional steps that they have to do. So now we've just extended that whole time from getting a customer an order because of all of our internal challenges.
Yeah, but you forgot about that customer service person was on vacation, and so just sat in the abyss for a week until they got back.
How fun is that? And then what happens, right? Then the customer calls and says, hey, this was supposed to be a next day order. I haven't seen it for a week. And it's like, oh, we're sorry, it was on credit hold. And that person, so it's like, how do you bring those exceptions to the top? How do you do things faster? How do you make sure that things don't get stuck with one person? We always used to call it like the, what if they win the lottery? Some people call it, what if they get run over by the school bus? It's a little bit morbid for me. So I prefer to think people are winning lotteries, not getting run over by a school bus with grandma. But what happens when they win the lottery and they say, hey, I'm not coming in tomorrow? Peace out. Right. If all of your stuff is sitting there, how do you go back and, again? So, but the other piece to the simplifying the business process is I think a lot of people know what they want to do. I think that they want to do more inside, they want to make this business process that aligns to their desires, but the limitation is the business system.
Sure.
Right. So, we saw this quite often where I just wanted to stop an order if the margin was at a certain point. The system we were in couldn't do that. And so I want to do something simple. I want to do it for my business to make my business better, to make more money, or to make better margins. But my business system's not supporting my needs.
Yeah. I mean, and I think what you're kind of describing, right, is within your business system, your ERP, you're kind of talking about workflows, right, that kind of match that business process and kind of carry that through. Some other things, and we're going to revisit this workflow talk and how we solution for this. But another one that I've seen is like catching things that are buried deep in that business system that you're not really looking at on a daily basis. So stuff that falls through the cracks that could be, a stop or a hold. And because you're never getting a notification, you're not looking at that, but maybe every other week, things do fall through the cracks. Humans are going to fail. And so that's another one, I think, not to steal your thunder, but I think that was the third head of your three-headed dog.
I think that's huge is, there's things that some people sit and scan reports for. How do we let something else go through those reports and just highlight where there may be an issue? Not saying that is an issue, but it could be an issue. So let's be proactive in that manner.
Yeah.
But so there's one more, and I think it's really important. And it's how do we do more with less? It's the common theme. I'm sure that this is every small business hears this. I'm confident every big business hears this. Everybody in a small business wears multiple hats.
Right.
They also are being asked, to do more things, either from suppliers or customers. We literally used to have to take the FedEx shipping number and enter it into a portal that wasn't even ours to tell them that it's shipped. And then we had to then go back to our business system to confirm that we've done all of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's, again, how do we streamline that where there's repetitive processes? What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, when you talk like small businesses and the do more with less, I mean, just the nature of a small business and wearing many hats is doing more with less people, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you're going to ask all of them to efficiently do all of those different jobs and tasks, which they're not going to be able to give their full attention to each and every one of those with inefficient business systems. So it's almost like a double whammy. You've got less headcount to do just as much work, and then you probably have less, financial capability to organize the right tools and procure the right tools for your people to operate more efficiently. So it's a big challenge.
Think about it from that individual too, right? Let's put the perspective of a person that loves talking to customers, right? Mm-hmm. They start their job, they're talking to customers, and they're absolutely thrilled. And the interactions are really good. They're really helpful to the customers. They want to help. That same person, we then throw all of these additional processes on that maybe they're not good at. And all of a sudden, they stop enjoying their job as much. They start seeing customer calls and spending time with the customer as not as important because I have to finish these other 5 things. And so that customer then loses that, opportunity to have a good experience. Customer experience goes down, employee morale goes down, and you start seeing that dwindling effect of as we ask others to do things that aren't value add, they lose that. There's a lot of negatives that come with it.
Yeah. So we have simplification of business processes, doing more with less, and then catching those things that you wouldn't otherwise see on a regular daily basis is kind of some of the problems that we're addressing right now. So where there's problems, there's consequence. I mean, but there's also solutions, right? So what's your thought on?
Well, let's dig into two of them, maybe with some real world examples. So the first one, when we talk about simplification of business processes, we've kind of talked about that in terms of the challenge, but maybe not the solution. So when we talk about workflows, and again, we talked about that business process of we have a credit hold. My former company, the way that we handled that, again, outside the system. So I would say we did a pretty good job in that we used a CX, or a customer experience platform called Freshdesk ticketing solution. And we had an automated set of steps. And so we would basically say, hey, customers on credit hold. So they'd hit a button. It would automate an email to accounts receivable. We would go through all of that process back and forth to make sure that the right people saw the right things. Finally, once it was approved, it went back into the customer service box. So it wasn't fully reliant on one person. So we automated a lot, but there's still one big problem.
What's that?
It's outside the system.
Oh.
So that customer service person gets it, and they have to then go back in, just like accounting had to go back in and release it. So I think in my head, the perfect world solution is workflows. Simple, right? That's a simple way to start getting some massive productivity gains, workflows. So instead of that email going, the system automatically sends that workflow.
Sure.
Inside the system.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, and, drive into some of like the pain of being outside the system in that solution that you guys deployed, right? I mean, many times you can get away with something like that, and you don't have to necessarily always catch up the system. Like, you don't have to, but many times there's people that have to, they go through all this work, the workflow kicks off outside the system, and then they've got to kind of duplicate that effort to make sure the records match inside the system, like inside the ERP, and go catch that up. And so that's just a massive inefficiency for highly talented people who I'm sure are really great at their job.
And again, we can talk about like the very specific detail of what's visible to happening, right? Or slowing down a customer order, but what are all the downstream effects that causes?
Right.
The good news is, hopefully your business system is doing that, and you're not sending stuff out to customers that can't pay, because that's a huge issue. But I think like if we take that workflow and we expand upon it, and we say like, what's pie in the sky best case scenario? It's that when that workflow comes to my phone, right? So I'm on the golf course, living country club life, about to get my first hole-in-one, because it hasn't happened in many, many years. So, we're playing golf, and all of a sudden I get that notification away from my computer, and I see it, and I'm like, that's our best customer, right? We know they're going to pay. They just put in an order that exceeded their credit limit. Okay, that's fine. We know they're going to pay. Or having that ability to dive into things on your phone, you get the point. But if I could then approve it from my phone, away from my computer, sitting on, watching the Olympics at night, and that come back, release the credit hold, release the order, and send a notification to the customer service rep that everything's been done, we just saved a ton of steps. That's what I want. Yeah.
And it's not just like a ton of steps, but like the time to react swiftly. Like sometimes you can't put a price tag on that, right? Because sometimes it could be you're standing with the customer, right? Like if this gets held up, like how bad do you look? Like you mentioned earlier of this fell through the cracks. Like how do you explain that to the customer? Because Sally was on vacation.
Yeah.
Like, they're not going to love that conversation, and your reputation is going to be impacted.
I mean, when a production line goes down, it's not cheap. Quite the opposite.
No, let's not stop production.
Holy smokes, you better get that stuff there.
Yeah. No, it's a great example from your past there. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, and the other piece is the longer you wait to order a part, the longer deliveries could change. So again, being on top of things, getting things done as quickly as possible, the system has to support that, right? You can come up with the best process in the world, but if the system doesn't support your processes, it's just not going to get followed.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about like the ERP, the system, and setting up those workflows, I mean, from what you've seen in different solutions you've worked with, I mean, mature modern ERPs, is that pretty, I guess, user friendly to create those workflows? Because I think that's a fear of a lot of people. It's like, oh well, how complicated it is. I don't write code. I can't even read a book, you know. So how complicated have you seen different solutions be?
I mean, it's a great question. It has to be simple to the point of, I think the best solutions are drag and drop. I think that they have to be integrated to the business systems because yes, again, you could have a workflow system outside, but you need to pull data from the business system. So as far as setting them up, yeah, I mean, they've got to be simple. It's got to make sense to the user what's happening. And you don't want to have to go to IT every time you want something created or modified, but you also don't want everybody doing it. So it's finding that balance. I definitely think there are good solutions out there, drag and drop functionality where it makes it simple for users to create.
Yeah. And I'm even thinking, and it wasn't even my role, it was my wife's role at Lockheed, right? When we're talking workflows and push notifications that you mentioned of, and it wasn't necessarily the golf course. It was just like another building, right? Because some of these plants are so large and you attend an in-person meeting at another building. Like you may need a hot request from them and you can email them a million times over, but until you track them down and put that in front of them to say, hey, I need you to address this, you're almost hand carrying a lot of things through the process. Whereas like the goal for technology is to enable individuals to sit back and manage it smartly, right? To where it's like, okay, this isn't getting done by, XYZ in the 2-hour time frame that it was supposed to be getting done. Why not? What's the delegation, as we elevate this request on up? Like we need to have tools in place that can swiftly get things done, because at the end of the day, there are hot requests in manufacturing to get things done to not stop the line.
And I think one of the biggest issues, so when I think about that, you're exactly right. We used to literally, when I had a problem, got out off my butt, I walked down the hallway and I went to the my warehouse team or the production team. I was like, hey, got a hot order, I really need your help. But in a big large manufacturing company, that's not possible. But the really important piece, no one's at their computer all the time. So how do you get something to that person, that hot request to the person, and alert them really quick? You pop up, that notification on the phone as urgent, right? That's the best you can do. But it also, again, there's ways to create that urgency in technology today without being at the computer, and that's the really important thing.
And so workflows aren't necessarily new, right? But it would be a new introduction for many businesses out there. But say there are those that already have some workflow capability.
Yeah.
There's an automation piece to this too, that is where we're kind of talking about these innovation use cases that is really going to take that workflow and kind of transform it. So as far as like rapid process automation, so we call it RPA. I mean, do you want to define that for the group? Because I think that is one of those terms that's really catching some buzz, and those capabilities are starting to flow out really nicely.
Yeah. I mean, this really falls into that do more with less. I mean, obviously, all of this, the important piece is all of this goes together and creates one system. And that's why it's so important that you find something that can do all of this.
Yeah.
When we talk about all this, RPA workflows, maybe it's AI, ML, or maybe it's taking all of those and putting them together into a more complex piece that adds massive productivity, right? So
Right.
when it comes to RPA, what is it? It's robotic process automation. It's essentially letting call it a bot on your computer or on a computer go do all of the manual tasks that someone else would be doing. There's a lot more to it, but that is it to very simple explanation.
Yeah.
When I think about robotic process automation, I think about that person, and I'll give you my example from my previous role, but I think about the person that's literally taking things and going and keying them into another system just so that we're tracking it all. When I was at SwageLock, we had something called D-Track. So we had a pickup counter and we would also deliver stuff. And we had a system called D-Track to basically sign for the order. So a couple of things happened. I have a delivery or a pickup order. I manually take that, go put it in D-Track. So that's manual step number one. Hopefully I key everything in right, because that could create a whole nother chaos. So we key it in so it shows up in D-Track. Second piece is customer comes and picks it up, or we deliver it, we get it signed, great. That's all has to be done. The last piece is, what do I do with that proof of delivery, that signature from the customer? We would literally print a PDF, bring it over to our files, save it there, and we'd go back into the business system and say, John Smith picked it up. Right? That's crazy. It literally took someone, every week she'd spend an hour to 2 hours just keying in some really basic data entry stuff.
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you solve for that? What can you do? You have any thoughts? Have you seen
that's where a lot of this, your example is a painful example to hear. And that's where a lot of these automation pieces and going forth with these workflows, because your systems aren't always going to be like this nice, tightly integrated. It's just not always going to happen. However, with this RPA, we can send these, data sets and have these bots kind of populate this data in other, places or in your business system and pulling it in, push and pull and so forth. And I think that's kind of where you're getting at, is how we solve this with RPA.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think back to my experience in my previous role, and I'm like, I see things that happen now, and I just think, wow, like, why didn't I know about that 7 years ago when I was going through this? And we'll post a link to this, but one of the things is, RPA, there's an Infor customer and there's an Infor use case on this, but they take the delivery notices. RPA takes them. So no one's manually doing this. RPA takes them, loads them into something called Infor document management, right? So that's the repository of all documents, and it can also tie back into, a warehouse order or a sales order. So it takes that delivery notice, loads it into Infor document management. Now, when I go into the sales order, I can see that proof of delivery right there. When I go into the warehouse order, I see that proof of delivery right there. So when the customer calls and says, this is a $50,000 order, I have to see proof of delivery on it, it's right there. You don't have someone going and searching through, find, hoping that everything was keyed in right. So I think there's some really cool things out there that, again, I wish I knew about earlier, but now that I know about them, I want to share with all of the listeners, like, hey, start looking. There's some really good stuff happening.
Yeah. And it sounds small, right? I mean, but again, when you detail like your past on the signing and the PDF and the filing and the upload and the copying, like if you can take that away and reallocate that energy and effort towards truly like profit generating type activity, that's where I think the value piece comes into what's happening here. And so, yes, is it awesome that that document repository can connect? And yeah, that is absolutely incredible. But all of those painful steps that you detailed is, I think, maybe the more incredible piece, because connecting the data sets, within the system, sure, a lot of people can do that.
Yeah.
However, taking those manual, tedious efforts away from folks is the goal here. And so I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think sometimes we need to take there's a philosophy, EOS, entrepreneurial operating system. They have something called clarity break. Sometimes we need to take a clarity break in our business, high level, and be like, are we doing things repetitively? Are there areas that we're struggling? And then go, well, let me go figure out what's out there. Because that's, again, I guess start asking those questions, because that's where a lot of that productivity increase comes from, as well as how do we move those people into profit growth instead of just doing these tasks. So
right,
tough, man.
So I think those are great examples, and I think that this is just one segment. Right, we're going to have many more of these episodes that are based around use cases or based around AI and ML. Right, it's a massive buzz that's going on out there, and I mean, I really think businesses aren't doing a whole lot about it because they're sitting and waiting to see, what's going to happen with it. How do I best utilize this? But there are some early movers that are really moving the needle and generating positive outcomes on their bottom line and even their top line growth.
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right. But even outside of AI, ML, there's like real concrete things that aren't as, using data sets necessary. This stuff you can employ today on the manual processes and gain that advantage ASAP, right? AI, ML, there's a lot of data science that has to go behind it, but shoot, workflows, RPA, you can find places in your business to really take advantage of that today without needing all that. So
it's that crawl, walk, run.
Exactly.
It makes sense to go that way logically. So
hyper productivity is what we're going for.
This was really good. And I think the users or the listeners are going to really like what they heard. But what they really want to hear, what's that?
They're users of something. So you're right.
Yeah, users of something. You're right. I did use users. But what they really, really came to hear is your way too early pick for our college football champion of the year. Who do you got this year?
It's really not too early, Tristan. It's right around the corner. Opening day of the best sport ever, college football. And I say college football because it's different than pro football. But wow, there's a lot of pressure on this because I know that there's going to be a lot of people. This is going to go out, and people are probably going to make some bets on my recommendations. But
hundreds of people.
I think some real contenders that I see this year are Harvard and Georgia Tech. And it's a joke because, if I mention Harvard and Georgia Tech, it's not accurate. Sorry to all my technics out there. Whew, I don't know. There's a lot of good teams. Because of the new playoff format, I think Texas may be in it.
Okay.
I think they're going to be really strong.
I do too.
I'm going to go with an all SEC, Texas, Georgia, just because, you can call me a homer all you want. I am.
Yeah, that's fine. You can be a homer.
Kansas City. But do you have any disagreements? Is Florida State mad because they got left out again?
I'm going to stay mad for probably
as you should.
Eternity.
Yeah.
But, it's okay. But Texas, Georgia, good picks. If that happens, I hope to see Georgia.
You never know. It could be Colorado, right? I mean, they got some big stuff working over there.
Prime time, baby. Well, this is a prime time episode. Episode 7 coming to a close. Drink your H2O. The show, we're here for you. And the episode.
There we go. Have a good one. Looking forward to the next. We're going to have a guest visitor next time, Tristan. I just know it.
Yeah. Come on with them.
All right. Have a great one.
Bye.